Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Escape Velocity. I am here, your host, Tracey Halvorsen. I'm always here. And I am here talking with Christina Melito, who is a creative director at 15.4 and has a lawnmower going in her background right now because that's just the way things happen.
We have to
So,
get things done, don't we? We still got to
well,
get
no,
things done.
that's the universe just saying, like, how good are you going to be able to deal with the issues we are going to throw at you today?
Yeah.
So we're going to roll with it. Anyhow, so thanks again for listening. And just a little background. So Christina kind of got on my radar a little bit unusually in the sense that she just kind of reached out and wanted to chat. And she's, a fellow creative working in the same area as I am, in Maryland, has spent the last almost 20 years working in this industry. And I'm, it's funny, you'd think more people would kind of reach out and ask to talk and engage, and I'm just telling you, they don't. The ones that reach out are usually like spammers who want to sell you something. So it was a real breath of fresh air, and I took her up on her request, and we had a great talk, and I loved hearing about her journey and answering questions and asking my own. And so we decided that we would turn it into a podcast episode, which we are doing today. So Christina, thank you for joining. If you'd like to kind of give a little background about what you're up to right now and let everybody know who's listening a little bit from you.
Well, I will thank you again for your time about 6 months back when I thought I just needed a little check in from somebody I've admired for years who's been doing great work from just around the way, Baltimore. And your name came highly recommended as somebody I could maybe seek advice from or just throw some ideas around with. And so I still thank you today for that
You are most
time. You're
welcome.
very
Thank you.
generous, really. We're all very busy. And so that was lovely. So I'm about 1 year in, having switched agencies from ADG to 15.4. And, I was naive. I was a little naive about how easy I thought the transition would be from one team to another, from a larger agency to a smaller, from one set of clients to another. And so I'm getting my groove though now, and I'm really I am starting to flourish, and it's going really well. And so I just think this is a wonderful time to sit together and just reflect on the things that we've been through together, or the experiences we've had, and see if it helps your listeners. So,
Well, great. Well, all of my listeners, how there might be like maybe 10 at this point. I don't know.
hey guys, yeah.
But we are so appreciative that you're here listening right now. And look, it's been crazy the last couple years in particular. And I exited my old agency in 2019. I was like going through it, figuring it out, working with lawyers. It was so not fun. And then finally, like, things get signed, bam, pandemic happens. And I'm just like, well, I've already been kind of in lockdown isolation for last year, so I can deal with the pandemic. And then coming out of that, it's like the whole nature of how we work together got so changed by that. And then, the universe said, let's give you a little more fun.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like what I thought was crazy times passing, and then we get to a new normal that feels like normal, just accelerated into more crazy and more crazy. And from, being in client services, right? We work with people and we use our creativity and our other talents, not like the lawnmower guy who is using his lawnmower
My husband,
to mow the lawn.
right?
Um, but it's such a challenge, and it's really easy, I think, to navigate all the people in the mix in client services from your own internal team, and now you're managing more people and have more responsibility. And then, of course, there's the clients and whatever issues they have. So I think One question I have for you, being a year in where you're at, in the midst of crazy times like the rest of us, has there been, we all know the bad, right? Has there been one thing that's gotten you really excited that you were not expecting to be so exciting about the industry or your job or your career path?
Yeah. So, a couple things real quick. I remember when quarantine started, and there were a couple teams I was working with at my previous employer. There were like seven others of us like supporting a contract together, and I remember it was really a dark time for some people to get acclimated to the isolation or the perception of isolation, and then breaking that down with more virtual meetings, turning our cameras on, um, kind of water cooler talk and building time, and then rituals around how we can still stay connected. So I remember that, but I thought our teams thrived, and if anything, we were delivering some of the best work we had to date as a team, even though we were all virtual. And so, but like, fast forward to where we are now, and could we have guessed in 2019? Well, I think AI was out. I think ChatGPT was out or was just around the corner. I remember it was, and it launched. It was free. I was curious. I definitely wasn't. I don't want to say an early adopter, but I was definitely an early like tinkerer of like, what is this thing? And there was a moment about 4 or 5 months ago when my boss came to me and said, "Hey, there's this company I've talked to and I'm learning about that builds custom AI agents, like specifically for creative agencies." And I like instantly knew 10 things that if I never did again and could assign and direct to somebody that could be in the form of like this, like operationalizing AI, that I could free myself up or the team's time up to focus on strategy and focus on concept and dedicate more brain power to what I ultimately think clients want to pay for. That's the value, is like freeing up the human mind to do better work, to do more differentiated work, to more fresh, more. I can't wait to tell him. It's going to feel so bad. And so in that moment about 4 months ago, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the most, oh man, like it was a very moving moment actually, where I was like, oh, I don't have to flesh out a 60 to 100 icon library, custom icon library ever again. I can just define 15 of them and have an agent produce the other 90. Those are, I don't want my developer photoshopping logos that are going to go on the website. I'm like, no, I want to free them up to code. I want to free them up to build things from scratch and apps and build new product systems and stuff. So I am very excited about it. You know, I will say some people at the company at 15.4 are nervous, and they're not sure. And I do these little activities where I'm like, hey, I just saw you write a, like basically build a custom plugin for a client that's had to meet all these really complex requirements. And now that it's done and fully tested and launch deployed, can you just try to like reverse engineer your process using ChatGPT? Like just test it and see, could you under the like expertise that you bring as like a senior level software engineer, like, and you prompting it what to do, can you get the results that you want? Could it have saved you a number of hours? And he's done that a few times where he was like, I am impressed with what it can do. So that's just an example of like trying to chip away at the fear of something that I don't think is going away. I sometimes relate it to, remember when you had people working at print shop? I don't even remember this. You might. It might even be like, but you had people working in print shops doing paste up and manually cutting out CMYK sheets of color. And this was pre Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. And then the moment Adobe rolls out its software, it revolutionizes things.
Yeah.
And I think it created more jobs. And when Netflix launched its streaming content, very disruptive. And we can argue that there's a lot of bad genres now, thanks to Netflix, but there's all these nuances and like subgenres, and there's so much more available. And in theory, there's like more demand for more content and more experiences that we're sort of democratizing those big, those big like production companies like Fox, and like I'm fine if we chip away at those big guys, like so I I'm excited about
That
it.
is, yeah, I mean, you touched upon some really interesting things. First of all, just for people listening, I think it's really helpful for everyone to hear like what tools are you using?
So we aren't using a tool yet. I mean, we use ChatGPT, or I do. Some of us do, to do administrative tasks, to
Mhm.
assist in either calling research or formatting and organizing research. But that's my favorite way to use it right now, because I think learning and researching is 50% of my like time, understanding the client's needs and their industry, the market, users, uh, and so forth. I use it as a research tool predominantly in this moment, but we do want to we're looking to stand up ways in which we can relieve the production design aspect of producing design and digital products.
Yeah.
So that, full transparency, yeah, that's where we are. We're like a very infancy stage, but the ideas for what we could operationalize, even from proposal writing to writing technical requirements to doing technical audits pre signing a proposal, right? I'm like, we need to better understand the beast we are about to redesign and develop. We can automate a lot of that. We
Yeah.
can, yeah.
It's I mean, I'm right with you on AI being one of the most exciting things that I have experienced, and it reminds me of when the web was first getting started because that's when I got in and sort of obsessed with it, and it's why I named my first company Fastspot because I wanted a short domain name, and I had been obsessed with the idea that with a quick cam, this is back in the quick cam days, with a quick cam, a little Adobe After Effects knowledge, and knowing how to publish anything on the web, I could create commercials. I could create 15-second spots that prior to these tools being, as you said, democratized, that
Mm-hmm.
was the work of giant production houses and huge budgets. And here I am like thinking this is all possible now. And I think that AI is doing the exact same thing in terms of giving people a lot of ability. I mean, I use ChatGPT. One of my favorite ways to use it is if something's broken or if I don't know how to do something, from software to like, what did I use it for the other night? My pepper shaker had come apart and all the little pieces, it was like a grinder and all the little pieces had like fallen all over the table. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have to get a new pepper shaker or pepper grinder. And then I took ChatGPT, I took a picture of all the pieces and parts and said, "Can you tell me how to put this back together?" And it
I
did. And
love
I
that.
put it back together. And if I'm working
And
in
one less
software,
thing in the landfill too, by the way, which
yes,
I love.
yes.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm able to fix so many more things than I used to be able to fix. And I also use it a lot to, well, I'm thinking about like how I use the vision part of it where it can see things, you know, diagnosing my sick plants. I'll ask it, "Hey, what do you think's wrong with this?" With the kids' homework, I you know,
Oh, right. Yes,
I
yes.
don't
My
know how to
husband
do
uses
that.
it. My
I don't know
husband
how
has
to
the
do that,
patience to help with homework. I
but I will
um,
just take a picture of the homework sheet with all the crazy math on it that I don't even know how to do now and just ask it to, walk me through how to help one of the boys figure it out
mhm.
or to
Yeah.
verify that their answer is right or even to explain what is going on. So anyway, it's great for that.
Mhm.
And I was just talking to someone else earlier who was talking about Google's Notebook LLM, or Notebook, whatever it's called. But the fact that you can take a bunch of really complicated stuff, drop it into that, and get a 15-minute podcast that you can
Oh,
give your
yes.
team or the client so that they can understand complicated things very quickly and very easily versus read all of this research material and books or whatever. No, here, just listen to this and you'll be up to speed.
Yeah, in terms of like, if you use AI to assist in just communicating a creative
Yeah.
idea, it could be, you could think about it as prototyping. You could think about a client who maybe does like to tinker around, and it really is just an aid for them to get an idea out so that the right team can come in who has the expertise to say like interview and put like real people on camera and help tell that story. I just see it as a communication tool, which like I can use that help. um, I think it's going to help a lot of people and reduce a lot of hurdles and bumps and friction for training and learning and really just having certain kinds of tough conversations.
So I agree. And it just made me think, as a creative, one of the things you have to be good at is communicating abstract ideas to both clients and team members who have to execute.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that communication skill set that you do have from your profession, I do I believe that is the most exciting thing for me to see how AI is changing, because we are getting shorter and shorter from the idea to seeing what it might feel like or look like or act like, in at least in digital spaces.
Mm-hmm.
We were working with a client not that long ago, and while we're in discovery, while we're kicking off, we are going ahead and prototyping and wireframing and iterating and letting AI tools, give us instant feedback and vibe designing or whatever, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're vibing.
We
Vibing.
recently were working on a proposal, and along with the submission was a clickable prototype of a very particular kind of application they needed, and it was small in terms of its user flow, but it helped that the proposal writer didn't have to try to attempt to articulate it and
Yeah.
the aspects of it. And somebody else on the other side got to like kind of feel around, knowing that none of the code, I mean, it was done in Figma, but like none of the code was going to be used in then, but like to feel it and to react to it. I'm actually very pro hearing the reactions, good or bad, from stakeholders, because that's telling in and of itself. Because I feel like creatives are behavioral psychologists first, followed by researchers, followed by producers, and so yeah, it really was something that our team found like wonderfully helpful. I think that the proposal receiver was grateful to expedite the process, and it really helped us really fine tune the requirements and ultimately the cost. Which, like, I am all for delivering to the client what they actually need, and not necessarily what they believe they need that they've written into an RFP that we then mirror a response to. I'm all about like listening and really figuring out the need, the problem, and delivering just on that, or like versus we'll sell them whatever we sell, or like this is what we want to sell them. And I'm like, I really think we should just hear them out and maybe curb parts of our process to not over or under deliver.
Well, earlier, before we
You
hit
hit
the
the record.
record, we were just talking a little bit about, just the industry and how long we've been in it, how long we intend to stay in it and keep working. And I think basically what we're saying is we're both very curious people, and who both, I think, believe that there's always something bigger and better or more or different or more fulfilling or will give us growth, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
might be, ahead of us. We aren't sort of like looking for the finish line
Right. We
in our
embrace
in our
change.
lives.
We are open to adapting. Yeah. Hmm.
So knowing that we're similar on that front, I think that it's got to be hard when you're trying to work with people who do like to feel like they know the answer to everything before they've listened, or God forbid they even say, I don't know, but that's really interesting and curious. Let me think about it. And I'm a big believer in come to the come to whatever it is that you're coming to with curiosity. Don't already have the answer in your head. And if the client is the same way and appreciates that, it lets you move so much more quickly and the outcomes are just so much better
Yeah.
because everyone's going into it with a explorer mindset and a collaborative mindset instead of a agency vendor waterfall process. We'll see you in 3 months after we've
Oh, yeah.
done
No.
our research.
Right. Well, interestingly, one of the questions that you sent prior to this meeting that we're in right now was
This isn't
about,
this isn't a meeting.
well, okay, our cool,
All
fun
right.
chat.
Our chat.
Was about it had to about what was it, like innovation and risk in industries that are regulated, heavily regulated, and one of the techniques that I've used is sometimes I will want the company or the team or myself to come into that first meeting with an idea of what the strategy should be, just so I have something to challenge as I listen to them, like, because I feel like I need something in there to bend and squeeze and pull or chip away at, just so that, like, that's the framework that I need to debate in my mind. And so sometimes, like, and I like to look at the client's landscape and what they're already doing and what's public facing, and put together what I think their strategy is, so that when we walk into discovery meetings or stakeholder interviews or look at analytics from various digital tools they're using, like, then I can start to chip away at it or validate it and so forth. So yes, I'm all for, like, do we have an open mindset? Are we open to not knowing what's around the next corner? But for me, I don't, I think I like to walk in with something, and that's because I like to be more well read or researched. I like to have some amount of a barometer, as we used to say in my old team. Like, we build a barometer for how we know we're going to, like, navigate through this process, and how will we know that, like, we're getting closer and honing to the right territory and direction. So I just thought, like, oh, that's so interesting that you're like, let's go in blank slate. And I'm like, I almost can't. Because, like, I want to be able to have, like, listen to what they say about their subject matter and be able to follow up with a meaningful reaction, or a follow up question that lets them know I understand where they are and I understand what they're trying to do. But internally, I'm like, was my hypothesis right? Was it wrong? Just, yeah, is that like, I don't know, is that weird? What do you think of that? Yeah, that's fine.
I think
This is what it is.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think it's weird. I think it's interesting. I think it shows that you have a lot of empathy for your clients because
Yeah.
you want to know where you're meeting them at.
Hmm.
So, how can you do that if you don't do your research and understand the ground they are standing on when you meet them and what they've covered leading
Yeah.
up to that,
Talk
if
about
at all
building
possible?
trust, right? Yeah. I want them to know that I'm taking their problems and what they've been doing, like, very seriously,
Yeah.
so that they know at least I'm informed, or the team's informed, when we do make recommendations to pivot or evolve or expand or change or whatever it is, just so they know that, like, we're very informed on, like, what you've been doing, and some of it's great, some of it's really great. Sure. And then we like inch our way when we talk about like regulated customer, clients that operate in regulated industries. Innovation isn't a 45-degree turn. It's like every month, every quarter, we're going maybe 1 degree, 1 degree, get there. We're moving the needle. And after a year, because typically the clients I've supported in my previous employer, we were on like 3 5 year long contracts. So we had to kind of have an end goal in mind at the beginning, knowing it's 10-degree pivot, but like how do we guide this client through in a way they feel confident, maybe even still in control, that like we're going to inch towards like differentiating you or like tweaking your tone or approach, so forth. So anyhow, it's just some things
I
else.
think so that made me wonder, have you ever experienced, and maybe you haven't, hopefully you haven't, but have you ever experienced a point in a project with a client where you thought you'd been building the trust? There'd been a lot of agreement and consensus, so everything feels like it's moving along in the right way, and then actually, this is a two-part question. Either one, the client says, I wanna make a left here,
Mhm.
and you're shocked and also, "No, we absolutely are not going left here, we're going right." Has that ever happened around, a creative direction or a strategic direction where they just come in and suddenly and there's the lawnmower back again. I thought he was gone. I thought he'd called it a
He was
day.
in the back for a little bit. Now he's in the
He
front.
must have missed a spot right by the window. He's like, "Oh, I missed a spot."
He is detail oriented in his lawn craftsmanship.
It's nice. It's like white noise, but
Well,
yeah, I
is the
mean,
question, have has there been a bigger pivot? Yes or no? And then if there's been a pivot, have you been able to wrangle the client back over to like no? Or
yeah,
like convince
what do you
them?
do when you have a stakeholder show up who thinks they do know exactly what has to happen, and it's the absolute wrong thing? How do
I mean,
you
I don't think I've ever been like that. I don't think I could characterize a moment like that quite that severely. Not that severely, like it was dramatically, but there have been a couple times where we've had to pivot, and we can talk about that in a minute. Is your question ultimately though, like how we wrangled them back? Is that a kind of story you'd want to hear, if at all?
Well I do think that's interesting, but I guess my deeper question is, while on its surface, something happening like that can seem like, "Oh, no, everything was going great, and now we've got somebody showing
Mhm.
up who carries some weight,
Yeah,
and they are saying some crazy shit right now, and how are we gonna get this back on the rails?" Sometimes I find that those moments in a project can accelerate better outcomes
sure.
because there's this conflict now. There is this
Tension. Love
pressure.
it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
tension. So
Hmm.
that's where I was kind of curious to get to. In that example, it's not invited in, and I'm a big believer in being in
Yes.
control if you can,
Oh,
right?
samesies. Yeah. I guess I'll say have been there. We to mitigate the chances of that happening again. When we get into discovery and we do stakeholder interviews, we try to explain to the client who would be the most ideal candidates. And it could purposely be people we know don't see eye to eye. We might stick them in the same meeting, we might not. We try to understand the motivation. We have one point of contact that'll like guide us through with the context and the political climate, and so we can understand the weight or gravity of what we're hearing from certain people. My favorite thing to do actually is to pull them all into one room. That is my preference would be to do facilitated discovery session or sessions, depending on how big it is or the kinds of information we need to get out of the team. And we purposely present exercises and questions that we know the chances of tension arising, like we want to create an environment where those things are happening, where we do have to talk politely, but we do have to put it out in public and like hash it out. And so I'll say, yes, there have been times that's happened. And now we try to like get ahead of that and just embrace it and know. And now that we're really good at like managing through those discussions and being okay with being uncomfortable and guiding the client through, it's okay to be uncomfortable. That's exactly what we want. It's by design. And getting them comfortable enough to open up and things like that. Like, again, behavioral psychology. And so, but when there have been times where there's a curveball, and even once in my new job, like we knew what logo we were going to proceed with of the handful we had presented, and they shared it with some stakeholders that weren't in the traditional stakeholder team, and they had a subjective thought about it, what that they that we just couldn't get, they could not get past what they were seeing. And I was like, I don't see that at all, but you know, if you really want us to consider ways of salvaging aspects of this, you know, I'm open to being flexible and finding a way that everyone feels heard, that we are empathetic and okay, we, you know, but sometimes you want to pitch the work, you want to pitch those creative and design decisions or strategic decisions, you almost want to bake in a scientific angle to it, or a data driven, or like we've seen a pattern that when we do this or when we use this color combination, or we know users prefer this type of photography at this angle, like we just try to study up on like what does perform well, what aspects of visual layout work well. We go to LinkedIn and X and Facebook and we like read the trend reports, and so you try to bring in the objectivity in how you talk about the work, how you prepare the team to even dissect the work, right? So we recently had a visual identity kickoff, right? Which is like, okay, we've done the messaging portion of your brand. We're going to move into the visual part of that. And like, let's together, stakeholder team that absolutely doesn't do graphic design at all, or like study theory, design theory, or behavioral psychology. Let's like I will tell them straight up, like, how do we remove the subjectivity from it? Because we aren't designing for you. I'm not designing for me. I'm not designing for you, other stakeholder. I'm designing for your college students or for your college students' parents.
Yeah.
And I was like, so here's some criteria we recommend. How do you all feel about this? Do you agree? Is anything missing? Should something be removed? You know, and it's another way to say, like, to build that barometer together. Because then you can go back in a few weeks' time and say, remember the stuff we said, like, would make it successful. Here it is again. And so, like, now that as the more I try to reduce risk, which is weirdly something I say a lot, is like, how do we better communicate? How do we build the expectation? How do we bring the client along? How do we make them feel like they know how to receive this work and make like informed decisions about it and approvals? And so the, you know, we're for years we've been tracking with like we're getting more approvals than not. We're like moving through these things. We aren't like what touch points, what document, whatever it is, what tools are we administering to manage expectations on both sides throughout the duration of what can be like a 6 to 12 month long project,
Yeah.
where you're like, we ain't got a lot of budget sitting around to like totally redo the visual identity, when at the end someone's like, oh, you didn't do a trademark research. You didn't like check to see if this was trademarked, which like obviously we do, you know, but like there were times where like people may not have, and you're about to release a logo that looks a lot like the Nike swoosh, you know, or like you got to do your research. You have to maintain a pulse on their competitors. You have to make sure you're not about to drop messaging that sounds just like their competitors. So
Yeah.
it's a lot, but I love it. I mean, I love it. So
What's your favorite aspect of what you do, if you could say?
I mean, um oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I do feel like very like fortunate to get to hear a customer's problem and then be trusted to set a team free on like really solving for their problems.
Yeah.
And one of the questions you'd thrown out was like, what is a what is like an unknown? Oh, I love the question. Hold on.
Let's see if I can find it.
I know I got the little list here with this list. Yeah. It's
Biggest misconception outsiders have about
it's
creative work.
about what team. Yeah, it's about like what designers do that like the stakeholders have a misconception about, or like they don't.
Yeah.
And and I don't know if I try to manage this in presentations, but I don't know if they know just how much we deliberate over decisions that like I mean visual designers like graphic designers are zooming in 10,000% on their logo. They're like we're drawing like we're in there, we're like all up in, we couldn't be more intimate with the details of the problems that they have or the solutions we're proposing for them. And so sometimes it's a script and they want to like take a sentence out and you're like whoa, that's like the sixth beat of the 8-beat structure. I don't think you quite understand the impacts you're making to this like whole message.
Yeah.
And that can happen in art direction and so that we spend hours talking about their problems and really assessing their problems is I and that we're very well researched and aware and maintaining that pulse in their industry on their behalf is something I love to do, but I think there's also this misconception of like how, you know, well read or how much does the team actually care about, I'm like
Well, yeah.
weirdly
I
a
mean,
lot. Like we think about it at 6 a.m. sometimes.
I know, right? Sometimes more than the client even.
Right, right. Well, so I love when a client is like, oh, thank God we found the people. We found the people. Yeah, you do it. And you tell me and they show me numbers, sure. And like, cool. And explain it to my stakeholders, great. And I can go to sleep at night. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I think it's the best compliment when someone says, "Wow, this really feels like us. This feels like the us that I always thought we could be, but I could never articulate it. I could never visualize it.
Mhm.
I didn't think it was possible."
Right.
And then not only do they feel like it reflects them in a powerful way, it reflects them with big headlights, right?
Mhm.
That shine a big path forward for them
Mhm.
because what I love is, yes, hearing the problems. I'm an obsessive problem solver.
Mhm.
It's probably why I need my own therapy is because of how much I try to fix and problem solve for everyone. But I think that a lot of times clients don't know or they don't allow us, speaking collectively as just creative people, to dig for the problems because we want to solve business problems.
Mhm.
We don't want to solve aesthetic problems. We're not in to
Performance problems.
redecorate.
Mhm.
Yeah. And our process is not for performance. This is not performative strategy. Whether it's a website or brand, packaging, whatever, it's all about the business. And so many times actually, I get an RFP or somebody reaches out and they're like, Here's who we are and here's what we need."
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Here's an example. We are a company, we just bought our competitor company and we're merging now. And we think all we need is a website with like no real UX, support or research or, no consideration of how voice and tone and brand is shifting for one or the other or this now new entity. And it's we of course in this particular instance where it's two companies merging, they think easy peasy, just give me a new site. And we're like, well, will you continue to administer the same sets of services? How does
right,
how does a customer base from one company feel about now getting services from the competitor company? And we're like, have you thought about how that and in the end I don't know if they saw the value of that, but we were like, we don't know any other way. We really think it's our responsibility to tell you that this is a problem you should address now. versus waiting until something fails down the road. Like really embrace fully what you're trying to do here, so that your company is at least positioned to like do better
Yeah.
ultimately. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's so fun, and I think you're right. I think we probably spend more nights lying awake thinking about our clients'
it's
businesses and
fun though,
goals,
right?
projects. It is
It's
fun.
not
It's
scary. It's just like fascinating and fun. And like they're real problems. Like
yeah,
they're real problems. That's what's like so wild is like I get to assist in hopefully helping them and like being a fresh perspective, or even like saying, here are three distinct patterns we're seeing, and like, what's your reaction to that? Sometimes you want to create an environment that they discover it. Like you
yeah,
just like lay the groundwork and you're like, what do you see? And then they're like,
yeah.
oh,
I
yeah,
always warn clients or caution them or promise them that they may think that they are signing up for a brand project or a website project. It might not even be digital at all.
right,
But if they are not transformed through the work that
right,
we do for the better, right? And the business as well, but everybody involved is going to change through this process. That's when I think you start to understand that like a website redesign can be a complete organizational
yes,
transformation.
change management.
It can and should change everything for the better, and so to just realize that that's what you're really doing. You're not doing a website.
Yeah,
You are changing the organization,
yeah.
and who the organization serves will benefit from that, which will ultimately, serve the organization.
So sometimes, if you were to say that exact language to a client, they might think, "Oh, but we're not ready for change." And so sometimes I like to just like hear the problems, hear about how their current web team manages blogs and posting and making updates and adding new landing pages and so forth. You can hear the lawnmower. I totally apologize, but
Yeah, I mean, you've gotta
sometimes I
really
just
take
want to
the lawn
hear.
out.
I want to like hear the ways in which they manage their brand and operate in their brand and use their tools, and then we kind of like to just bake in best practices, knowing their needs, and let it be an aha moment,
Yeah,
and like let them happily discover like this just got way easier. Like you no longer have to manually put this blog post there or this article there. Like it'll cascade through. It'll related content's going to work so much better now. And I almost like it to be that. I don't know how to explain that, but there's been moments when we're doing training and the client's like, I love how you built this module for this thing that like I hated dealing with before. And we're like, uh-huh. So,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, making people's lives better by removing pains in their asses is great, but I think you're right. You don't wanna freak clients out by saying, "Everything's about to change. Are you ready?"
And I'm sure you're not going and saying that unless you know that's what they asked to hear and or been like they're paying for.
Yeah, I mean, some of them aren't ready or don't want that, and that's fair, right? But I think there are a lot of clients who know that other things need to change, but they think they're talking to me about X, Y, or Z, and what ends up happening is it's a holistic change.
Mhm.
It's gonna touch all aspects. It's gotta have buy-in, it's gotta have support, like, it's gotta have momentum, it's gotta have belief, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
from the right people in the right ways. Which back to your point earlier of reminding people that this is not for them, nor is this is not in my studio, this is not a personal project. We are doing this work to communicate and to
Like prompt
create
action.
action
Yeah.
from very specific audiences
Mhm.
who have their own very specific pain points and needs and concerns and stresses. And It's almost like if you do it right, you finally detach. It's like a conjoined twin that you finally detach, and the organization realizes, oh, we can do our own internal stuff.
Mhm.
And then there's our marketing and our
Right.
brand and our website. And we don't, we can solve them in different ways because they should be solved differently. But we don't have to just keep being tied to our own structure, our
In our
own
own
way of
ways.
doing things, of thinking, of talking. We can change that. I think I was just talking to a very brilliant strategist about working in, oh, who was she working with? It was like it was a hospital system,
Mm.
and I think it was a higher ed hospital system, and she was saying that these doctors who had spent a lot of time and money get a lot of, initials after their names, liked to use big words, big complicated words when they were explaining what they were going to do with
So
whatever
do
their specialty
patients.
was, right? Yeah, just a lot of jargon and big complicated medical terminology
Scary too. It
that
can
your
be,
average
depending
reader
on, yeah.
is just going to be, yeah, intimidated by. And she literally found data that supported that when you present medical information in easy to understand plain language, there is a there is a trackable drop in mortality. So she was like able to use data to convince these doctors and these, you know, maybe professors too, med school doctors, I don't know. Basically, you use plain language, drop all the jargon and trying to be sound impressive because you're smart and everyone knows it, and you'll actually be saving lives, saving more lives.
It's amazing.
And they were
I
like,
get that.
"Oh, okay. Well, I guess we gotta do that."
They're like, we are in this profession to do just that, save lives. So how could we not? Right.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I obviously work, maybe not obvious, but I used to work for the government. And one of, speaking of regulated industries, we had to communicate at like an eighth grade reading level.
Yeah.
Like that's a plain language. Plain language is, I think, their term. It's like written in policy. Like if you're going to do strategic communications, it has to be at these kind of this reading level for the general public because people just need to understand how taxpayer dollars are spent. And if a scientist is writing their research paper about the wonderful cutting edge life saving vaccine work we're doing and research and development we're doing, but they're like, I don't understand. How do you either turn that into a metaphor or like really distill it down to the building blocks of the fundamentals of like what a scientific research like approach is and how much time that will take to turn into a life-saving vaccine or therapeutic, like I that's also fun. It's hard work though. Like how do you just I love distilling down problems into like their simplest forms so
Yeah.
that we can like rebuild a story or like a narrative around or package around that. So yeah, very fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And finding where those stories are true, right?
Yeah.
And which ones are the jargon that they've been living with for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I've been in virtual calls with scientists and I'll be the first to ask the question. I think everyone's like thinking but afraid to look, maybe I don't know, not as polished, but sometimes I'm like, are you talking about a vaccine? Like they're just like so 10 feet ahead, like way high up here, like language barrier. And I'm like, I think you're describing a new approach to a new style of vaccine, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is that right? I don't mind kind of getting them to kind of start all over in those rudimentary building blocks. Like I'll be I don't care. Um,
Yeah, I think it's
to look
human nature.
vulnerable. Yeah.
No, it's human nature that the closer and deeper we are into our own little world, the harder it is for us to remember that not everyone is there with us.
Hmm.
It's that myopic kind of self-centeredness of the human experience that can be problematic. but I do think that it's a great reason why everyone's always gonna need an agency, right?
Right. Everyone's going to need someone to distill and repackage, or sometimes just remind the client, like, do you realize, like, from my perspective, this is a huge valuable thing that you just explained to me, but you
Yeah,
brushed right over that. And
yeah.
like, what, we need to lean into this, please. And they're like,
Yeah, they're
really? That seems cool to you? I'm like, what? This seems mind blowing. Like, so those, yes, that, and
yeah,
those are
even
some of the
just remind
scientists. I'm like, yeah,
if I had a dollar for every time I reminded a client that it's okay to keep retelling the great stories because not everyone has heard them.
right. And especially in
Um,
this day of age, I mean, click,
yeah,
click, news feeds, like moments. You have, if you even have that,
yeah,
to
yeah.
remind people of, yeah, your position and or your thought leadership or the experience you've had or the foundation you've laid. Like, yeah, yeah, I would.
So let me ask you this before we wrap up. Now, especially now that your lawnmower
I know
guy
now that I got quiet.
is he done? Is he done, or is he
Well,
just
it's
really
starting
far
to
away?
rain. That could be it.
Ah.
Here, at least, I'm in Ellicott City.
What advice would you have for other women
Mhm.
or anyone really, but who is coming into this field, is getting started, is thinking about it, and wants to know that they are, maybe following the right path? I don't know. Would you have any advice, any tips, any guidance?
Yeah. So, in the end, like, be true to yourself, and not everything's comfortable, and that's okay. But it is still important to, like, get feedback or, like, get validation, whether that's from a peer or people you're working with, people that are observing you do your thing. Something that I absolutely leverage that from peers, even peers I don't work with anymore, or whether it's a career coach or a therapist or a psychologist. Like, it's okay to talk through your problems, your creative, your, like, career problems and things. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable, but seek feedback and continue to, like, hone and find your voice and your approach. And I would say it's, don't, like, you must seize the opportunities to get those questions out. Like, don't be afraid to ask in a big meeting with stakeholders if something's gnawing at you. And in time, you might find more clarity as you go about, like, why do I even want to ask this question? But, like, just seize those moments and don't be quiet, and don't worry about how people might see that. I'm the person that cuts people off. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I promise it will all boil down to a better solution and recommendation in the end. If you can just sort of get around that, I can be a lot sometimes or whatever. And it's something, actually, like, Steve Smallman's my boss. He so elegantly carries people through stakeholder interviews, and I love the training of just watching him in his element, and just being so graceful about extracting information from people and in a really comfortable way. But ask the questions, pull the threads, like, you getting the information you think you need to confidently make decisions about someone else's company. That's really important. And ask for forgiveness later, or, like, someone can pull you aside after that meeting to say, I don't know if I would have gone about it that way. And you can be like, okay, but I got the information I needed. Because that, get what you need, get you what you need from others. Get as much training as you can from
Yeah,
others.
and the relationships that you form
Yeah.
over the course of your career are gonna define it more than anything else. So be
Mhm.
really cognizant of, one of the last jobs I took before I started my own company was because of who else worked there. I wanted to work with those people.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn from them, and
You're
what I would
lucky, by the
also
way. You may have been at a place where you're like, I know who I don't want to work with. And
yeah,
just waiting for the moment where you could even get to a team or an environment, or even if it's in house, where oh, there's a whole different ways to think about problems or process or to approach peers or to get feedback or whatever. So like you are fortunate.
Yeah, I was. I was. I've had a lot of luck,
Yeah.
and good timing. But what I would also just say is don't wait around for somebody to show up and tell you, now you are an expert. Now you have a right to have an opinion. Now you can play around and try things and experiment. Now you're allowed to have a voice. No one is going to show up and give you that badge or that certification. And so, to your point about digging in and doing your research, it's like if you want a job somewhere or you want to work in a certain field, dig or you want to win a
You
client.
study that agency. You want to be somewhere, you network with them. You do a fake project that's in the
Yeah,
same industry of clients they're supporting. That's advice I've definitely given people who, for a variety of reasons, whether they geographically just need to be at a place where they are. I'm like, you need to be strategic in how you're even studying either the people you want to work with or the agencies you want to be at or the in-house shops you want to be a part of. If it's like an industry or calls that like you can really back that mission and like it's really meaningful to you. Like I have a breast cancer survivor friend who's like just finished school for design. I'm like, you know so much about the recovery process and cancer and like and you're so passionate about it, you could like totally work for a nonprofit or your amount of passion that you bring just like being a survivor could like totally be infused into the work you do day in and day out that you
yeah.
have immense conviction for. But it's also okay to like go anywhere and just see, just like open yourself up to
Oh, yeah.
experience and learn from that because not everybody knows what they want. I'm like,
No,
just get
and the
somewhere.
first couple, yeah, the first it's all just don't stop making moves, right?
Right.
I think those first couple years, do as much as you can do. Throw yourself do the grunt work.
Yeah.
Do it while you're young and
Be
you can
humble.
stay up late and you don't have kids to get home to, and then take your vacation time and go have fun, but do as many different things as you can do. And I just think, again, putting yourself out there, having an opinion, always being curious, and just throwing yourself into things is the only way to make progress. So and you are one of the few people that's reached out and connected with me
Blows my
in a
mind.
meaningful way. So I say that just to say, when I've reached out to people that I'm sure are like never going to respond, sometimes they do. More often than not, they do, because we're all sitting there thinking the same thing. Oh, they're so busy, or they're so
You
whatever.
have
They're not going
nothing
to
to
write
lose,
back.
though. I mean, yeah, the only thing you'd lose is not getting a response, but like, just be ready for that. And then the moment they do respond, and you're like, oh my gosh, then you're like, I can't. I have to use this time so wisely. Then the nerves kind of, what's the
Yes,
best pieces of advice to go seek out?
yeah. I had
Yeah.
a I had a great. I'll share one. When I was just getting started with my first company, I had gone at my last job. They'd paid to send a couple of us up to New York City to a conference. This was back when Flash was still around. We went up to Flash Forward in New York City, and it was just a great conference. It was so fun. It was like half creative, wild, cool stuff, and half super geeky, technical. It was like developers and artists all together. And so I came back, I had a great time, learned a lot, was super inspired. And then I remember thinking, damn, every that audience was so diverse, and there were definitely about 50-50 men, women in that audience,
That's why.
and from all different, it was just it was a great audience. Every single person up on the stage was a dude.
Oh,
And this conference was run by a woman, Linda Wyman, the famous, infamous Linda Wyman. So I wrote her. I told her how great the conference was, but this was something I noticed, and I was just curious about it. I didn't come at her. I didn't attack her, but I was just like, how is that the case? And she wrote back and said, you will be surprised to hear that we don't get speaking proposals from women. So there's only so many we can ask that we know of that are out there. And she said, so I look forward to reviewing your proposal for your talk
No
that you
pressure.
want to give. It's the best, is the best throw the gauntlet down moment in my life, honestly. And I'm eternally grateful for her for doing that, because I did send in a proposal. It was accepted. I spent 6 months like driving myself batty because I wanted to create something to show, to demonstrate what I was talking about. And then I nearly threw up at least 1,000 times
Yeah.
preparing to get up on that stage in front of 2,000 people
Mhm.
to talk about something that I was just kind of figuring out myself.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best experiences of my life. And it totally helped launch my company. But, that never would have happened if I hadn't written to her to share some feedback and ask a question.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think I would be at 15.4 if I didn't just kind of bump into some people at an AIGA event and just got to talk and shop and business. And um, it was Will Smallman. He runs the business, and we were just. I was transparent. I'm like, I'm a creative director at ADG, and so he knew. I didn't know how he would perceive like a creative leader from another shop. Like I wouldn't, not real competitor, but ish. And we just, what mattered was we spent 25 minutes just sort of immersed in talking about what the industry's like, and it was just fascinating. And from there we just kept talking, and the chemistry was great with the team. And so I think networking is where it is. I think cold calling, putting resumes in, not knowing where they're going, and you gotta just get out and talk to people. The experiences are just so much more rich, and you never know who you're going to meet, or the opportunities you'll get, or with the podcast you'll end up on.
yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah,
will
no,
say,
it's,
conferences is one way that I keep like
yeah,
like talk about a way to validate. Me and the senior designer Kristen I work next to, we both went to first round. It's a day long set of presentations by where agencies show you their first round brand pitch decks, and they're like unabridged, unedited, like this is what we show. You see our strategy. And I knew my experience the first time I went. That was one of a few moments in my last like 10 years were core memories where I was like, oh, I think the same way. I have the same philosophy and ethics, and like I can do that color palette. And so I asked her after this experience, which she found wonderful. I was just like, were you like, oh my gosh, I strive to achieve that, want to do that? Or do you feel like you already are, just maybe on smaller scales? And she was like, the latter, girlfriend. I was like, yeah. Like, I was so relieved that she saw in her abilities, like, we're doing this. Like, it's
yeah,
maybe smaller scale. It's not Wolf and Allen's, but like, heck, if we're not doing just as informed and critical and like awesome work as they were. And so when I came to 15.4, I said, Steve, boss man, my goal is I want to like have a first round pitch deck that I can take one day to this conference. Like I want them to come to Baltimore. I want to like dream about the agencies that would be on that list to present, and like, could we make it to that list? And so that's just like, you got to create your goals. I've heard you talk about that in the with other episodes, and like create what success, define success for you. It doesn't have to be like revolutionary. It could just be like these one-off little things, and like
yeah. It doesn't happen sitting at home, though. It
it
doesn't
happens.
happen. Doesn't
I do
happen.
love sitting. No, I'm not
Saying,
gonna lie. I do love sitting, but you got to get out there. You got to put yourself out there. Go
look,
to happy hours.
I hate networking more than you can imagine. I'm an introvert extrovert. I can be extroverted in certain situations when I know what I'm going to be talking about, or I'm with a small group of people. Big groups of people where everyone's wearing their name tags and you're just walking around like, "Hey, who are you? Hi." I would
Ooh,
rather stick needles in my eyes. I find it to be so uncomfortable.
I'm gonna
But
try to get you to one. I'm gonna
yeah,
try to get you to one. That's my goal. October. I don't know the dates yet, but it's coming.
well, I will accept. I will accept, and maybe it will be less painful
I
because
think you'll
you
see. I
have
think
invite
you'll
you
see.
I think
Yeah.
you will invite me to a good one.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah, and so again, if you're like me and the idea of all of this is, scary or painful or intimidating, it is so great to reach out to people to find, a mentor, someone that can help say, "Hey, I'll be the friendly face when you show up and,
yeah.
we can hang in case like
Mhm.
there's creepers there or whatever
Yeah.
it
Or
might be."
clicks. It's usually
Yeah,
clicky.
or clicks, or if you're just not sure, but you do just have to start saying yes to getting out there and forming those relationships, because even if 99 of them are awkward and uncomfortable, and the one that will stick could change your life.
Right. They could change everything because their whole trajectory of like,
Yeah.
yeah, it could. This is true.
All right. Well, that's a
Oh,
good one to end on.
yeah. It
Thank
wasn't
you.
microwave baloney, but
Oh, wow.
you'll have to listen to some other episodes to figure out what that means. But yeah.
Yeah, nobody wants microwave bologna is really the moral of the story. So
Which, by
don't
the way, is essentially a hot dog. I mean, like a hot dog, a microwave hot
flat,
dog.
flat, round, hot
Hot dog.
hot dog. Yeah, I guess it is. And I suppose you could roll it up. You could invent a whole new food group, really. It could be a roll like fruit roll-ups. It could
Hmm.
be meat roll-ups,
We could, or we
bologna
could.
roll-ups.
Let's not and say we did. Yeah.
All right. Check
Thank
in a
you.
few months when Christina and I have launched our new hot rolled meat line.
That will totally fail before it even launches. Thank
No,
you.
seriously, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for the universe's way of just trying to make it a little bit more uncomfortable for you with
Yeah.
the lawnmower. Thanks to all the listeners for laughing along with us about the lawnmower. And I hope this was an interesting conversation for anybody who's listening. Christina, I'll see you at that networking event. Thank you again.
Thank you.